Sometimes life comes to a halt so suddenly that it feels as if the world has stopped spinning. And in that suspended silence, a quiet but insistent cry rises from the deepest part of the heart. It's a cry that does not echo in the open, but rather vibrates within, a trembling resonance that asks questions words cannot fully form. You find yourself standing at the edge of a familiar path, unable to take another step, surrounded by the ordinary sounds of life that have suddenly become distant and muffled. The sunlight, once warm and welcoming, seems to lose its color, and the air itself grows heavier, filled with an unspoken weight. This is not just the fatigue of the body or the mind, it is something far more subtle, more profound. It is as if everything you once found meaningful has faded, leaving you standing in a strange, quiet emptiness. There are moments when you wonder what triggered this sudden pause, this invisible wall that now blocks your way forward. Was it a disappointment, a loss, a word left unspoken, or perhaps the slow accumulation of unmet hopes that one day became too heavy to carry? You try to retrace your steps, searching for the exact moment when joy slipped quietly out the back door and certainty became a visitor rather than a companion. The world continues its endless, noisy march, but you remain outside of it, looking in, uncertain where you belong. It is in this suspended time that the first questions begin to surface, persistent and inescapable. What is the purpose of all this motion, this striving, this endless search for meaning? Is there something more beneath the surface, something that endures when the rest has crumbled? You look inward, hoping to find answers, but the silence inside feels both comforting and unsettling. It is a blank canvas untouched by yesterday's colors, and it is up to you to find what comes next. The stillness sharpens the senses, revealing things long ignored. The way your hands tremble slightly when you are alone. The faint memory of laughter now overshadowed by worry. The steady beating of your heart that reminds you life continues even when you feel motionless. In these quiet hours, you notice the small, unnoticed details. The way light falls across the floor. The gentle hum of distant voices. The smell of earth after rain. These fragments of the present become strangely precious, almost sacred, as if each one is a signpost pointing to something you cannot yet name. Questions multiply. Why do you feel drawn to moments of silence, as if hoping to hear a voice that speaks not through sound but through presence? Why does every attempt to distract yourself only lead you back to the very place you're trying to escape? You find yourself turning toward the sky, searching for meaning in the patterns of clouds, in the wind that carries with it both the scent of change and the memory of what was. It's as if you are waiting for someone, or to speak, to answer, to explain why the road has vanished beneath your feet. As hours stretch into days, the longing deepens. It is not simply the desire for answers, but for peace, for the kind of stillness that doesn't merely hide pain, but transforms it. In quiet moments, you recall the stories of old, the words handed down by generations, promises of rest for the weary, comfort for the broken, hope for the lost. You wonder if those words could be true for you, here and now, when everything seems so uncertain. Sometimes a memory surfaces, a time when faith was simple and untested, when you trusted without hesitation that you were seen, known, and cared for by a presence larger than yourself. But now that trust feels fragile, overshadowed by questions that grow louder in the silence. Still, the longing remains, to believe that there is a reason for your journey, that there is a purpose to your pause, that you are not alone in this empty space. In the hush of early morning, or the hush that falls at dusk, you begin to reach out in your thoughts, not with the certainty of one who expects a reply, but with the hope of one who simply wishes to be heard. You whisper words you're not sure anyone is listening to, words of confusion, words of longing, words that sometimes dissolve into silence before they can fully form. And in those moments, a strange peace sometimes settles, as if the act of reaching is itself a kind of answer, a reminder that the heart's cry is never wasted. You start to sense that maybe the silence is not a void, but a threshold, a doorway through which something new might enter if only you are patient enough to wait. The world is not as empty as it seems. Every pause carries within it the possibility of a new beginning. And so you remain where you are, suspended between the life you knew and the life that is yet to come, held by the quiet conviction that your searching has meaning, even when you do not understand it. Each heartbeat, each breath, each unspoken prayer is a testament to hope, a hope that the journey, though interrupted, is far from over. There comes a point, sometimes quietly, and sometimes with the force of a sudden wave, when silence settles so deeply around you that it becomes almost a presence in itself. At first, you notice it as the absence of noise, the gentle withdrawal of familiar voices, and the vanishing of the comforting distractions that used to fill every spare moment. But soon this stillness reveals itself to be something greater, something that presses in on all sides and draws your attention inward, into the places you least wish to go. It is in this first encounter with true solitude that you begin to feel how sharp and restless loneliness can become, how it sits just beneath the surface of daily life, waiting for any pause to rise up and make itself known. Alone, you become aware of the subtle ways in which fear takes root. It starts as an ache, a heaviness in the chest, a flutter in the stomach, a shiver that moves up the spine. Fear is not always loud. Often it arrives disguised as simple uncertainty, as an uneasy question whispered in the dark. What if this silence never ends? What if the emptiness you feel inside is not a passing cloud, but the shape of things to come? You try to remember the warmth of connection, the security of a kind voice, but the memory flickers and fades, replaced by the cool realization that, in this moment, you are alone with your thoughts. With the stillness comes the inevitable confrontation with the things you have tried to avoid. Worries you kept at bay with busyness now step forward, bold and insistent. Questions you left unanswered begin to echo, growing louder in the absence of distraction. You find yourself asking, not for the first time, why the world can feel so empty even when surrounded by people, why the ache of longing remains unsatisfied, why the comfort you seek is just out of reach. The loneliness sharpens every sensation. A creak in the floor becomes a shout in the silence. The ticking of a clock turns into a reminder of every second spent waiting for something to change. And then comes the deeper fear, the one you hesitate to name, the fear that maybe you have been left behind, that your prayers and hopes have drifted off into space, never to be answered. Why does it seem, at times like these, that God is silent? Why, when you need reassurance most, does every attempt to reach out meet only stillness? The stories of faith you once held close, of guidance in darkness, of comfort in sorrow, now feel distant, as if they belong to someone else entirely. You search for a sign, a word, even a feeling, but the only reply is the soft, unyielding hush that fills the room. It is not just a spiritual question, but a human one. What are we to do when the voice we long to hear is silent, when the presence we crave seems absent? There is a peculiar kind of exhaustion that comes from waiting for an answer that does not arrive, from hoping that the silence will break and reveal something, anything, to make sense of your confusion. This exhaustion seeps into every part of you, weighing down your steps, dimming your hope, making each new day feel like a repetition of the last. You try to push through, to find distraction, but the silence is persistent. It follows you into the night, lying beside you as you stare at the ceiling, tracing the shape of your fears in the darkness. There is a sense of powerlessness, a realization that no amount of willpower or effort can force the silence to speak. You wonder if you are alone in this, if others have known the emptiness you now feel, if they have survived the long nights and uncertain mornings. But shame often keeps you from voicing these questions out loud, afraid that your struggles are a sign of weakness or a failure of faith. Yet within this emptiness, something begins to shift. The very act of naming your fears, of acknowledging the loneliness, becomes a kind of quiet rebellion against despair. There is a strange strength in admitting your vulnerability, in letting the silence say what it will without rushing to fill it with noise. In these moments, you begin to notice things you missed before: the steady rise and fall of your breath, the subtle warmth that lingers even in solitude, the persistent beat of your heart that reminds you life continues, even in the absence of certainty. You start to realize that, though the silence is vast, it is not impenetrable. Beneath the surface of your fear, there is a faint sense of presence, a glimmer of hope that maybe the silence itself is not a punishment, but an invitation. An invitation to lay down your defenses, to let go of the stories you tell yourself about control and certainty, to sit quietly and wait for something new to grow in the soil of your longing. As the days pass, you find that fear does not vanish, but it changes shape. Where once it threatened to overwhelm, now it becomes a companion, a reminder of your humanity, of your need for connection, of the deep desire within you to be seen and known. And in that recognition, the silence loses some of its power. It becomes less an enemy to be defeated and more a landscape to be explored, a territory where you may yet find, hidden among the shadows, the first fragile signs of peace. Sometimes, after hope stirs softly within, life returns with the roar of a storm, chaotic, relentless, forcing you once more into the heart of struggle. The comfort of memory and the fragile peace of solitude quickly give way to a new kind of battle, one waged not just against the world outside, but against the many voices that rise up within. There are days when waking feels like stepping onto a battlefield, uncertain who the true enemy is, the relentless doubts inside, or the harshness waiting beyond your door. Each morning brings with it a fresh wave of questions and anxieties. Shadows gather at the edges of your thoughts, whispering that you are not enough, that every small mistake is proof of your weakness, that nothing you do will ever bring lasting change. These voices are persistent, tireless. They recall every past failure, every awkward word, every moment when fear held you back. Sometimes the worst battles are fought not with others, but with the quiet cruelty of your own inner critic, a voice that knows exactly where to wound. Meanwhile, the world outside presses in with its own storms. You may face criticism, misunderstanding, or the cold indifference of those who do not see the struggles you carry. There are moments when kindness is in short supply, when words become weapons, when the glare of judgment makes you want to withdraw and hide. The daily news brings images of chaos, uncertainty, conflict, reminding you how fragile peace can be, both inside and out. The onslaught is unceasing. Deadlines, obligations, disappointments, the pressure to keep going, to keep achieving, to keep pretending that everything is under control. As this storm rages, the mind and body tire. Exhaustion settles in, heavy and persistent, making even small tasks feel insurmountable. You move through the day on autopilot, going through the motions while the heart aches for rest, for relief. In the mirror, you hardly recognize yourself, a face marked by sleepless nights and the burden of unspoken worries. There are times when you want to surrender, to let the storm win, to stop struggling against forces that feel so much larger than yourself. And yet, even in the center of this turmoil, you sense that the fight is not meaningless. Each moment of doubt, each painful question, each exhausting confrontation is shaping you, teaching you to see the world with new eyes. There is something strangely noble in the struggle, a dignity that comes from facing pain honestly, from refusing to let the darkness define you. Sometimes the most courageous act is simply to endure, to stand in the wind and rain and refuse to let go of hope. The inner conflict continues. Old wounds reopen at the slightest touch. Insecurities flare up without warning, and every attempt to find peace is challenged by fresh waves of uncertainty. You may question your worth, your place in the world, your ability to persevere. And yet, there are moments, fleeting but real, when you glimpse the truth that you are stronger than you imagined, that you have already survived storms you once thought would break you. You begin to recognize the faces of your inner adversaries: fear, anger, regret, envy, shame. They are familiar, persistent, sometimes overwhelming, but not invincible. You learn, slowly, to confront them, not with denial or distraction, but with honesty. You name them one by one, and in doing so, rob them of some of their power. This process is neither quick nor easy. It is the work of a lifetime, a daily practice of courage. All the while, the world keeps spinning. People pass by, each carrying their own secret battles, each weathering storms invisible to the rest. In rare moments of connection, you catch a glimpse of this shared humanity, a look of understanding in a stranger's eyes, a hand extended in silent solidarity. You are reminded that you are not alone in your fight, that your struggles are echoed in the lives of others. As the battle drags on, fatigue becomes a constant companion. Yet within that tiredness, a new kind of strength begins to take root. It is not the strength of unbroken spirits or easy victories, but the quiet resilience born of endurance, the resolve to keep going even when each step forward feels impossibly hard. This resilience is not glamorous, not often recognized or celebrated, but it is the anchor that keeps you steady amid the storm. You realize, perhaps for the first time, that the goal is not to conquer every enemy or silence every doubt. Instead, the true work is to keep moving forward, to hold on to hope, to continue seeking the light even when the sky is dark and the winds howl. And in this steady, stubborn journey, you begin to sense that the storm will not last forever, that beyond the battle, beyond the pain and the exhaustion, something new is waiting, quietly gathering strength, ready to be born. There are moments when faith, once a sturdy foundation beneath your feet, feels as fragile as a thread stretched thin by too many storms. You sense yourself teetering on the edge, each gust of doubt threatening to send you spiraling into uncertainty. The questions swirl inside you. How much more can you bear? What does it mean to believe when belief itself seems to falter? The comfort of certainty has faded, replaced by an uneasy sense that everything you thought you knew is now up for question. You search for something to hold on to, some reassurance that the journey is not in vain, that the long nights and lonely hours have a purpose. Instinctively, your thoughts turn to the words you once trusted, the verses and promises that shaped your earliest hopes. You remember lines repeated in whispered prayers, fragments of psalms and ancient stories that once seemed carved into your soul. Yet now, even these familiar words feel strangely distant, as if you are reading them through glass. You long for them to come alive, to leap from the page and fill you with the confidence you once knew. Instead, you read and reread, hoping for a spark, a sign, a single moment of clarity. As you turn each page, the struggle intensifies. You ask the hard questions. Is it enough to simply keep going when every feeling contradicts your belief? What if faith is not the absence of doubt, but the choice to keep reaching out, even when your hands come back empty? You remember those who went before you, people who also wrestled with uncertainty, who spoke to God from places of deep fear and longing, who poured out their frustrations and confessions in words that have endured through centuries. Their honesty becomes a lifeline, reminding you that faith has always lived alongside questions, that the truest prayers are sometimes nothing more than desperate cries for help. So you begin to speak, not with the polished language of certainty, but with the raw honesty of someone who has nothing left to hide. Your words may falter, your voice may tremble, but you refuse to pretend. You tell the truth about your doubts, your confusion, your longing for reassurance. Sometimes your prayers are silent, little more than a sigh or a groan. Other times, you find yourself speaking aloud in the quiet of your room, confessing your fears, admitting your weariness, pleading for a reason to keep trusting. And in this vulnerable honesty, you sense a quiet shift, the realization that your struggle itself is a form of faith, a sign that you have not given up, even as you wonder how much further you can go. The search for something solid continues. You listen for guidance, hoping for a word or a whisper to break through the static. Some days, the only answer is silence, and you are left to wrestle with your questions alone. But on other days, you notice small moments of reassurance, a verse that catches your eye, a line that seems to speak directly to your need. These glimpses of hope are rarely dramatic. They arrive softly, like sunlight breaking through clouds, warming your spirit for a moment before fading again. Yet each one gives you the courage to take another step, to keep asking, to keep seeking. You begin to understand that faith is not a fortress, but a pilgrimage, a path that winds through valleys of uncertainty and climbs mountains of hope. There are no shortcuts, no guarantees of constant comfort. Instead, you are invited to walk on, trusting that the road, however uncertain, is leading you somewhere worth going. Your doubts do not disqualify you. Rather, they mark you as a traveler, a seeker, someone brave enough to keep moving forward even when the way is unclear. As you continue, you start to appreciate the paradox at the heart of faith, that trusting does not always mean feeling certain, and believing does not always mean understanding. Sometimes, faith is nothing more than the willingness to show up, to keep searching, to keep whispering prayers into the silence. And in this persistent reaching, this refusal to let go even when your grip is weak, you discover a strength that surprises you. It is not the strength of unshakable confidence, but the quiet resilience that comes from holding on through the storm. Little by little, the words you once trusted begin to take root again, not as magical incantations, but as reminders that you are not alone in your struggle. The ancient prayers become your own, their honesty echoing your fears, their hope reflecting your own yearning. And though your faith remains fragile, you sense that it is enough, not because it is flawless, but because it endures. Each day you choose to trust, however shakily, is a small victory. Each prayer, however uncertain, is a step forward. And as you move through this season of doubt, you begin to glimpse the possibility that, even here on the edge, you are being carried, drawn forward by a love that remains, steady and unwavering, even when your own faith falters. There are nights when sleep will not come, when your body lies still, but your mind whirls in a silent storm, and every hope you gathered in the daylight dissolves into shadows across the ceiling. The darkness presses close, heavy with unanswered questions, and the familiar comfort of routine is nowhere to be found. You turn from side to side, seeking relief, but the ache in your chest refuses to fade. In these hours, when you are most alone, something deeper begins to stir, a longing so raw it almost hurts to name. It is here, in the thick silence of night, that you reach for prayer not as a duty or tradition, but as a desperate call for rescue. Words escape you at first. All that rises is a groan, a sigh, a whisper of longing that trembles with the weight of everything you can't express. Gone are the polished phrases and rehearsed lines. What's left is honesty, naked and unguarded. You confess what you cannot carry, naming the fears that chase you, admitting how tired you've become of being strong, how heavy each day feels. There is a certain relief in letting down your defenses, in telling the truth about your helplessness, in standing before the quiet and admitting, I don't know how to go on. I can't find the way forward on my own. Your prayer is not always beautiful, but it is real. It moves between anger and hope, between longing for answers and the simple wish to be heard. Sometimes it is a plea for relief, a yearning for the pain to ease, for the noise inside your head to quiet, for just one sign that you are not abandoned. You ask for mercy, not as a right, but as a gift, for strength not to conquer the night, but simply to make it through. You remember the stories of others who cried out in their own darkness, who found unexpected peace in the act of surrender. Their words become your own, echoing down the years. Have mercy, hear me, don't let me be lost in this night. As your heart empties, something subtle shifts. You sense that you are not truly alone, that your longing is met by a presence both gentle and unyielding. The silence no longer feels empty but inhabited, as if the very act of calling out has opened a space for grace to enter. You do not receive easy answers or instant comfort. Instead, you find a quiet strength rising within, the strength to sit with your sorrow, to accept your weakness, to believe that you can begin again even from this place of exhaustion. You ask for new hope, not for everything to change at once, but for the courage to keep hoping when hope itself seems distant. You pray for a small light to break the darkness, for a single breath of peace to calm your racing thoughts, for the wisdom to trust that morning will come no matter how endless the night may seem. And in the quiet that follows, you hear not an audible reply, but a faint sense of being seen, understood, held by something greater than your struggle. The prayer becomes less about words and more about presence, a simple opening of your heart to the possibility of renewal. You surrender the need to control the outcome, letting your longing stand bare before the unknown. You wait, sometimes impatiently, sometimes with the patience that only suffering can teach. Each breath becomes a petition, each tear a silent testimony to the depth of your need. With time, you notice that the night, though still long, is not as unbearable as before. The act of reaching out, of admitting your limits, brings with it a measure of peace. You are reminded that hope does not always roar. Sometimes it arrives quietly, a gentle pulse beneath the grief, a whisper that encourages you to keep moving, to trust that mercy is real and new beginnings are possible. And as you lie there in the dark, spent but not defeated, you realize that your prayer has already been heard, not because all is suddenly well, but because you dared to call out, to be honest, to ask for what you need. This, you discover, is the true miracle of the night, not that it ends, but that in the midst of its deepest shadows, you find the courage to hope once more. Sometimes you find yourself lost in memory, recalling moments when you sensed that presence close by, a sudden peace while walking beneath the trees, a wave of joy for no reason, a certainty that you were not alone, even when no one else was there. These recollections shine like scattered jewels along the path, reminders that what you long for is not a fantasy, but something you have glimpsed before. And yet the more you search for it now, the more it seems to retreat, hiding just beyond your reach. The emptiness intensifies, becoming both a wound and a teacher, exposing all the ways you try to fill it with lesser things. You begin to understand that this desert is not a punishment, but a place of invitation, a space where all pretense falls away, and you must face your true self with all your questions, doubts, and aching desires. Here there is no one to impress, no mask to wear, no comfort in routine. What remains is the simple, raw need to know that you are seen, that you matter, that there is a source of water in the dryness. You find yourself whispering ancient prayers, sometimes only a single word, "Come." It is less a demand and more a confession of how much you need something beyond yourself. Days stretch into weeks, and the thirst remains. It shapes your decisions, your hopes, your prayers. You become more honest about your need, less willing to settle for surface-level answers. There are moments when you catch yourself pausing in the midst of daily tasks, hands in the dishwater, eyes on the traffic, ears tuned to the quiet, and in those pauses you feel the weight of your longing as a sacred thing. It is the thread that connects you to the source of life itself, drawing you back again and again, even when answers are slow in coming. In the wilderness, your soul learns to listen differently. You become attentive to the subtle movements of grace, the way sunlight filters through a dusty window, the unexpected kindness of a stranger, the way your heart beats stronger when you dare to hope. These small gifts do not erase the hunger, but they sustain you. You realize that what you long for is not simply relief from discomfort, but real presence, a living encounter that goes beyond mere knowledge or belief, something that can transform the emptiness into fullness. As the days pass, your prayers shift. You begin to ask not just for your thirst to be quenched, but for the courage to remain in the desert as long as necessary, to allow your hunger to teach you, to shape you, to lead you closer to the one you seek. The longing itself becomes a kind of offering, a sign that you are alive, that your heart has not grown cold or indifferent. Even as you wait, you sense that you are being prepared for something new, something deeper than you have yet known. You come to see that the desert is not a place of exile, but a place of possibility. It is here, stripped of every comfort and illusion, that you are most truly yourself. In the ache of longing, you discover a strange freedom, the freedom to be honest, to be weak, to need. The emptiness you feared reveals itself as holy ground, a meeting place for the soul and its source. And so you continue to walk, step by weary step, trusting that even in the heart of the wilderness you are not alone, and that the living water for which you thirst is nearer than you ever dared imagine. There comes a point in the journey when you pause beneath the relentless sky, breathless from the long walk across the barren stretches of your own experience, and wonder, why this path? Why so much wandering, so many hard miles, so much thirst that never seems to ease? It is in this questioning that your heart turns inward, seeking not just relief, but understanding. Every ache and every trial stirs up the same haunting refrain. What is the purpose behind all this? Why must the road to hope wind through such difficulty? And what could possibly be the reason for the pain that has left such deep marks? You find yourself asking, not in anger, but in a voice tinged with wariness and genuine longing to know. Is there meaning woven into the fabric of your struggles, or is suffering merely a shadow that follows every life without reason? You remember moments when pain felt senseless, a sudden loss, a cruel word, the collapse of plans that once gave your life direction. At times, the weight of disappointment has made it difficult to trust that anything good could grow from such rocky ground. Yet even as these doubts gather, another voice rises from the quiet places within, asking if perhaps there is more to your journey than what can be seen in a single moment. You begin to reflect on the stories you have heard and the lives you have witnessed, those whose laughter and resilience seemed born from places of deep suffering, who carry a light in their eyes that does not come from an easy life. You recall how compassion is often kindled by wounds, how humility grows in the soil of failure, and how genuine empathy springs from the taste of your own tears. Perhaps, you wonder, pain is not the end of the story, but a doorway to something more, a threshold through which you must pass to discover the depths of your own heart and the breadth of your own capacity for hope. The question shifts from, "Why am I here?" to, "What might I find in this place that I could find nowhere else?" You notice how every trial strips away the inessential, revealing what truly matters, carving away pride, exposing your dependence on grace, and teaching you to receive help. There is an honesty born of hardship, a humility that grows as you are forced to admit you cannot walk alone. The very wounds you wish to avoid become the cracks through which new light enters, illuminating hidden corners of your soul and teaching you the gentle art of patience. With time, you begin to see that suffering, while never welcomed, is not without purpose. It reveals both your limits and your longing. It burns away pretense, leaving behind the simple truth of your need. You become more real, less concerned with appearance, and more attentive to what is true. Trials, you discover, are not proof of abandonment, but invitations to deeper trust. A call to believe that even the most painful roads are not without meaning, that your story is part of something greater than yourself. You ask the difficult questions, and sometimes the answers come slowly, or not at all. But in the asking itself, you find a kind of healing. You give yourself permission to feel what you feel, to grieve what you've lost, to hope for what might yet be. Through every disappointment, every setback, you learn to look for the lessons hidden in the shadows, the quiet strength that grows with each act of endurance, the unexpected kindness that arrives in your weakest hour, the awareness that you are not alone, no matter how lonely the journey appears. You realize, gradually, that pain is not the enemy, but a teacher, A stern and sometimes silent guide, but a guide all the same. It leads you away from easy answers and surface-level contentment toward a wisdom that can only be earned through living, through feeling, through risking your heart again and again. The scars you bear become stories of survival, marks of transformation, reminders that you have been shaped, not shattered, by what you have faced. And so, with a new humility, you continue to walk, carrying your questions with you, allowing them to deepen your compassion for others who struggle along their own hard roads. You may never know the full reason for every sorrow, but you begin to trust that meaning can be found, not in the avoidance of suffering, but in the willingness to meet it honestly, to listen to what it has to say, and to let it shape you into someone more alive, more open, and more ready to receive whatever lies ahead. And then, almost when you least expect it, when the questions have worn themselves thin and your heart is laid bare in the hush of the wilderness, something gentle breaks through. It comes not with a shout, but with a whisper, a sudden hush that feels like an embrace from somewhere just beyond the veil of your exhaustion. It is grace, arriving quietly, unannounced, surprising you with its softness in the very place where pain had settled in for a long stay. It is not the grand answer you had been demanding, nor the sweeping change for which you'd pleaded, but a subtle shift, a new warmth that begins to spread through the cracks left by suffering. At first, you notice it in small things. The way morning sunlight sneaks across the floor, painting golden patterns on your bare feet, or the laughter that bubbles up unexpectedly while sharing a story with someone who truly listens. There is no explanation for why these moments feel so precious, only a sense that the world, for all its ache and imperfection, is still capable of giving gifts. In the middle of sorrow, gratitude stirs, tentative and unsure, like a flower daring to open after a long frost. You marvel at the miracle of its presence, how thankfulness can emerge in a heart that still remembers loss. You begin to sense that you are not alone in your longing, that somehow your cry has been heard, not necessarily in words, but in the way a burden suddenly feels lighter, in the comfort of a song that finds you just when you need it, in the quiet peace that settles in the wake of a restless night. It's as if love itself has come to find you in the wilderness, slipping through all your defenses and planting seeds of hope where none should grow. The pain is still there, but it no longer fills every corner. It has been softened by the presence of something greater, something that whispers you are seen, known, and still cherished. Pain, though never invited, begins to work a quiet transformation inside you. It is not the dramatic kind seen from the outside, but a slow, persistent shift that changes the way you see yourself, others, and the very world around you. At first, the experience of suffering strips away your outer layers, the easy confidence, the pride in self-sufficiency, the illusions of control. There is no hiding in the face of honest pain. You find yourself laid open, vulnerable, exposed to the elements of your own humanity. And yet, within this nakedness, something unexpected happens. You start to discover a depth you never knew was there. The familiar habits of avoidance, rushing, numbing, denying, no longer work. Instead, you are forced to sit with your discomfort, to let it teach you what it will. Each wave of sorrow or disappointment asks you to surrender the need to have all the answers, inviting you instead to dwell in a place of humility. The old urge to judge or compare yourself to others slowly gives way to compassion, for you begin to realize that everyone carries hidden struggles, that nobody is immune to loss or longing. This awareness softens your edges. Where you might have once reacted with impatience or defensiveness, now there is space for understanding, for gentleness, both toward yourself and those around you. There is a peculiar wisdom in suffering. It teaches you to see beyond surface appearances, to recognize the stories written in someone else's eyes. You become less concerned with appearances and more invested in authenticity. You are no longer interested in pretending that everything is fine when it is not. This honesty, hard-won, becomes a source of strength. You realize that admitting your need is not weakness, but a doorway to connection. The more willing you are to be real about your limitations, the more capable you are of reaching out for help and offering it in return. As pain does its patient work, you notice how it expands the boundaries of your heart. The horizon widens, allowing you to hold both joy and sorrow at the same time. You no longer fear vulnerability in the same way because you have tasted the relief that comes from being truly known. Suffering has shown you the value of listening, of presence, of just being with another in their hour of need. You learn that comfort is rarely about fixing problems, but about offering the gift of attention, a steady hand, an understanding look, a few words that acknowledge what is real and hard. As pain does its patient work, you notice how it expands the boundaries of your heart. The horizon widens, allowing you to hold both joy and sorrow at the same time. You no longer fear vulnerability in the same way because you have tasted the relief that comes from being truly known. Suffering has shown you the value of listening, of presence, of just being with another in their hour of need. You learn that comfort is rarely about fixing problems, but about offering the gift of attention, a steady hand, an understanding look, a few words that acknowledge what is real and hard. The humility that grows from hardship brings with it a new curiosity, a hunger to understand the deeper currents running beneath your daily life. You become a student of your own heart, noticing how quickly you are moved to judgment or resentment, and how much more satisfying it is to respond with patience. Even the things you once considered failures or weaknesses begin to look different in this new light. You see that your struggles have shaped you into someone more aware, more compassionate, more willing to embrace imperfection, not only in yourself but in everyone you meet. Over time, the marks left by pain become part of your story, not as scars to be hidden, but as proof of the journey you have walked. You carry them with a quiet dignity, recognizing that what once threatened to break you has actually given you a kind of freedom, the freedom to live honestly, to forgive more easily, to care more deeply. The boundaries of your empathy stretch farther than before, encompassing not just your own hurts, but the invisible burdens of others. Each day you are reminded that the world is filled with people who need the same grace you have received, who are waiting for someone to see them, to listen, to offer kindness without judgment. Pain opens you, if you let it, to new horizons, deeper relationships, a richer sense of purpose, and abiding gratitude for the smallest joys. It teaches you to cherish the moments of light, to savor laughter, to recognize beauty in the ordinary and the overlooked. Even as the echoes of suffering remain, they are now woven into a broader tapestry of hope and meaning. You become both more humble and more brave, willing to walk into the unknown with open hands, ready to receive whatever comes next. And so the journey continues, not as a story of triumph over pain, but as one shaped and deepened by it. The very things you once wished away become the soil in which your truest self takes root. You step forward changed, not in spite of what you have endured, but because of it, ready to meet whatever the next day brings with a heart that is wider, softer, and more alive than before. There are seasons when the future looks shrouded, every path ahead swallowed by mist, and each attempt to move forward only deepens your sense of uncertainty. Hope feels like a fragile ember flickering against the chill of despair. You reach out for something, anything to hold on to when your emotions spin stories of defeat and the world around you offers little comfort. In these moments, promises become more than words. They are lifelines, thin but unbreakable, stretched across the gulf of your doubt. The promises spoken long ago, written, sung, whispered in the dark, begin to rise within you with a quiet insistence that does not depend on your feelings or your ability to believe. You find yourself returning to these ancient assurances, not because you always feel them to be true, but because they remain, stubborn and unwavering when everything else shifts. The words of Scripture become anchors in the storm, reminders that your story is not as small as it sometimes seems. I am with you always. You are not forgotten. My grace is sufficient. You repeat them not to convince yourself by force, but to plant them deep within, trusting that even a seed of hope has power to grow in unlikely soil. There is relief in letting the promises stand, even when your faith is ragged and your hope runs thin. As you lean into these words, you realize that faith is not about conjuring a feeling of certainty, but about choosing again and again to trust what endures. It is the quiet act of turning your gaze from the shadows that crowd your mind toward the steady light that has guided countless souls before you. In this, you are not alone. The very pages of sacred text are filled with voices crying out from places of fear and darkness, clinging to hope when all else seemed lost. Their stories become your own, journeys marked by uncertainty, longing, and the quiet determination to keep walking one step at a time into the unknown. When despair presses close and your heart feels too tired to believe, you hold on to the words anyway. You let them echo in your mind, speaking them aloud if only to remind yourself that there is a reality deeper than your current experience. Over time, the promises begin to work their slow, steady magic, not by sweeping away your doubts, but by standing beside them, unafraid of the questions and fears that still linger. You learn to live with paradox, to trust in goodness when the evidence is scarce, to hope for light while still walking through shadow, to lean on what is promised even when you cannot see its fulfillment. Gradually, these assurances shape the way you see the world. You notice courage blossoming in the soil of surrender. You find strength not in the absence of struggle, but in the resolve to continue. Even when the landscape remains barren and the answers remain elusive, you become aware that something within you is growing, a quiet resilience that does not depend on circumstances, a gentle defiance that refuses to give up. It is not a naive optimism, but a hope that has learned to endure, a faith that has grown roots deep enough to weather every storm. You discover that it is possible to move forward without guarantees, to believe in tomorrow even when today is filled with uncertainty. Each day, you choose again to rest in the truth of what has been promised, that you are loved, that you are not alone, that there is a future and a hope waiting just beyond your line of sight. The promises become a rhythm in your soul, a song that plays quietly beneath the noise, steadying your steps when all else feels unsteady. In the end, you learn that the greatest act of faith may be simply to keep going, to wake each day and hold the promises close, to let them shape your vision and your choices, to trust that they will carry you through the darkest valley and into the dawn. You walk forward with empty hands but a heart full of hope, daring to believe that even now, even here, the future is being written with the ink of mercy and the light of unwavering love. In the midst of the turmoil, when anxieties swirl like restless winds and every plan seems to crumble before it can take shape, a quiet paradox emerges, a kind of peace that defies explanation. This peace does not come when all troubles are solved or fears are banished. Instead, it arrives like a deep breath in the middle of chaos, as if an anchor has been dropped into the very heart of the storm. You do not will it into being. It finds you, sometimes in the most unlikely places, settling softly over your mind and heart when you least expect it. At first, this calm feels almost fragile, as if the smallest disturbance could shatter it. You might even resist it, questioning whether it is real or merely a brief illusion, a momentary pause in the relentless noise of worry. But then you notice, while the world around you may remain as turbulent as ever, circumstances unresolved, questions unanswered, something within you has shifted. You are no longer ruled by the urgency of your fears or the pressure to control every outcome. Instead, you move through your days with a sense of quiet assurance, rooted not in what you can predict or manage, but in something deeper, something given. This is the peace that comes from surrender, not the surrender of defeat, but the surrender of trust. You release your tight grip on outcomes, letting go of the illusion that you can shape every detail to your liking. In its place, you embrace a radical kind of faith, the willingness to accept that you are held, guided, and cared for even when you cannot see the way ahead. You learn to breathe in uncertainty and exhale hope, to walk through challenges with open hands, ready to receive whatever each moment brings. There comes a stage in the journey when acceptance is no longer a reluctant concession, but a conscious, deliberate turning of the heart. You realize that all your striving, resisting, and attempts to shape life on your own terms have brought you only so far. There is a quiet invitation to let go, not with defeat or resignation, but with the calm humility that comes from recognizing the limits of your own power. It is a gentle surrender, an act of trust that is less about giving up and more about opening your hands to receive life as it comes. Acceptance does not mean you stop dreaming or caring, nor does it erase the ache of disappointment or longing. Rather, it is the willingness to trust that there is wisdom and goodness woven into the fabric of your story, even in the parts you do not understand. You stop demanding answers to every why and begin to ask a different question. How can I live fully within this moment exactly as it is? The pressure to control outcomes lifts, replaced by the slow, liberating realization that you are not the author of every chapter. There is a plan unfolding, mysterious and often hidden, but guided by a hand greater than your own. As you accept your place in this larger story, humility settles in. You see more clearly how much of your life is shaped by forces beyond your control. The timing of seasons, the hearts of others, the unpredictable turns of circumstance. You learn to honor your dependence, not as a weakness, but as a sign of belonging. Each breath is a reminder of the grace that sustains you. Each new day, an invitation to live with open eyes and a willing heart. Even your limitations, once a source of shame or frustration, now become a doorway to deeper connection and gratitude. Acceptance is not passive. It asks you to show up with courage and authenticity, to face each day with a readiness to engage fully, even when the path ahead is unclear. You learn to let go of the need for constant reassurance, trusting instead in the quiet presence that has carried you through every storm. There is a simplicity to this trust, a childlike willingness to be led, to take the next step without knowing where it will end. This is not naivete, but wisdom born of experience, the understanding that real strength is found not in rigid control, but in supple, flexible faith. You notice how this posture of acceptance transforms your relationships. You become less judgmental, more patient with the shortcomings of others, more able to extend grace to yourself. The urge to prove or defend yourself fades, replaced by a steady sense of belonging that does not depend on your performance or success. You find freedom in admitting your need, and in doing so, make space for others to do the same. The paradox is that this peace often arrives at the very point where your own strength has reached its end. It is born not out of victory, but out of yielding. The honest admission that you do not have all the answers, that you cannot carry every burden on your own. In this vulnerability, you find freedom. No longer burdened by the need to perform or impress, you discover a quiet space within where you are simply allowed to be. Here, the rush of anxiety loses its power, and you can listen for the gentle voice that reassures. You are not alone. You are seen. You are loved. With each passing day, you notice the subtle effects of this new trust. You are less reactive, less prone to panic when difficulties arise. Instead of racing to solve every problem, you pause, breathe, and ask what is truly required of you in this moment. Sometimes you are called to action, other times to wait. But whatever the response, you move with a sense of partnership, aware that you are not carrying your struggles alone. The peace that grows in you is not passive resignation, but active participation in the unfolding story, one that is bigger than your own efforts and hopes. Even as the world continues to spin in its unpredictable rhythms, you remain anchored. This does not mean you are untouched by grief or immune to hardship. There are still days when sorrow lingers and worry knocks at your door. But now, beneath the surface, there is a current of tranquility, a sense that you are held steady by something unshakable. You begin to understand that real peace is not the absence of storms, but the presence of trust, a trust that allows you to stand firm even when the winds howl and the rain falls. In this place, gratitude flourishes. You give thanks not just for the easy moments, but for the hard ones that taught you to rely on something beyond yourself. Each new day becomes an invitation to rest in this peace, to let it guide your words and actions, to share it with others who are searching for calm in their own chaos. The more you practice trusting, the more natural it becomes, until even the fiercest storms cannot shake the quiet confidence you have found. And so you move forward, not untouched by the world's troubles, but no longer defined by them. You become a living paradox, calm in the midst of clamor, steady in the face of change, hopeful in the heart of uncertainty. This is the peace that endures, the gift that sustains, the quiet assurance that, no matter what comes, you are safe within the embrace of trust. With each day, you become more attuned to the rhythm of surrender, receiving what is given, releasing what must go, trusting that all things work together for a good you may not yet see. This is not the absence of desire, but the right ordering of desire, placing your hope not in particular outcomes, but in the steadfastness of the one who guides your way. The uncertainty that once threatened to undo you now becomes an opportunity to lean into trust, to rest in the knowledge that your life is held and your story is known. Acceptance, in the end, is an act of courage. It is the decision to meet reality as it is, to love what is before you, and to find meaning in every moment, whether bitter or sweet. You discover that surrender does not shrink your world, but expands it, making room for peace, gratitude, and an abiding sense of purpose. And as you live into this acceptance, you come to know a deeper kind of freedom, the kind that is not bound by circumstance, but rooted in the unwavering promise that you are loved, guided, and never alone. Gradually, often without warning, the landscape within you begins to change. The darkness that once pressed so close begins to thin, letting in the soft light of a new dawn. You may not notice it at first, a slight lifting of heaviness, a subtle spark of hope flickering where there was only numbness before. Small moments stand out, glimmering with the promise of renewal. The ease in your breath as you step into morning air, a gentle laugh escaping your lips, the sudden realization that your burdens do not feel quite as heavy as before. Restoration does not rush in like a flood. Instead, it emerges with quiet persistence, filling the spaces left empty by pain and surrender. You find yourself more attentive to beauty, a slant of golden light through a window, the tender green of leaves unfurling after a long winter, the warmth of a smile exchanged in passing. The world feels different, though it has not changed. It is your way of seeing that has been transformed. With this new clarity, gratitude wells up, surprising you with its depth and simplicity. Looking back, you recognize how the hardest seasons shaped you in ways comfort never could. You see the lessons hidden in loss, the wisdom carved from waiting, the strength born in the long hours of uncertainty. The wounds you once feared would break you have become openings, places where compassion now flows freely, where your heart is both more tender and more resilient. There is a gentle pride in the scars you carry, not as marks of defeat, but as evidence of the journey you have endured. You begin to thank the struggles for what they have taught you, not because you loved the pain, but because you can now see the fruit it bore. You are less quick to judge yourself, more willing to show patience, more able to offer kindness without reservation. The memories of past sorrows linger, but they no longer cast the same shadow. Instead, they serve as reminders of how far you have come and how even the darkest hours held seeds of hope. Renewal is not the absence of challenges, but the presence of a new perspective. You find yourself less afraid of what the future may bring, knowing that you have survived more than you once thought possible. There is a steadiness in your spirit, a trust that the same presence that brought you through the night will guide you into whatever comes next. Each day is welcomed as a gift, each ordinary moment treasured for its quiet grace. You discover new energy for things that once seemed impossible. Old dreams stir awake, joined by new hopes born from all you have learned. Your relationships are richer, colored by deeper empathy and a willingness to be truly present. You listen more, speak less quickly, and bring a quiet confidence to every interaction. The boundaries of your world expand, filled with possibility and light. Gratitude, once an effort, now flows naturally. You thank the past for its lessons, the present for its sweetness, the future for its open doors. Even on days when shadows return, you know how to find the light, to pause, to breathe, to remember the steady progress that has brought you here. You have learned to honor every season, trusting that nothing is wasted and that renewal is always possible, even when it arrives slowly and softly. And so, as the light continues to return, you walk forward with a renewed sense of wonder. You carry your story not as a burden, but as a testament to the resilience that now lives within you. Restoration has become your quiet anthem, a song of gratitude for the trials that became teachers, for the darkness that made the dawn so bright, and for the gentle miracle of beginning again. There comes a point along the journey when your vision shifts, almost imperceptibly at first, but unmistakably with time. The circumstances of daily life, once so overwhelming and urgent, lose some of their power over your heart. It is not that the world's troubles disappear, nor do your responsibilities fade, but the ground beneath your feet feels more stable, anchored in something lasting. You begin to see with new eyes, as if a fresh lens has been given, one that brings the horizon of eternity into sharp focus, transforming the way you understand everything unfolding around you. This new perspective does not erase difficulty, but it gently reframes each moment. Loss and disappointment are no longer final verdicts. Success and pleasure are no longer the ultimate goal. Instead, you begin to weigh all things by a deeper measure, noticing what truly endures and what quietly slips away. You realize that every achievement, every struggle, every fleeting joy is part of a much grander story, one that stretches beyond the limits of a single lifetime. There is comfort in this, a sense of rest that comes not from perfect circumstances, but from knowing your story is held within a greater tapestry, woven with threads of meaning you may never fully see. You notice how the awareness of eternity changes the way you move through the world. The irritations and frustrations that once consumed your attention begin to lose their grip, replaced by a quiet patience and a willingness to let go. You no longer feel the need to rush through each day, anxious to secure your future or prove your worth. Instead, you learn to savor the present, to treasure simple moments, and to hold plans and dreams with open hands. There is a lightness in your spirit, a freedom that grows from trusting that your life is rooted in something that cannot be shaken by changing circumstances. With this shift comes a profound sense of peace. You recognize that your deepest security is not found in what you possess or accomplish, but in the one who remains constant through every season. The presence of God becomes your true home, the place where your fears are quieted, your restlessness is soothed, and your hope is renewed. No longer at the mercy of what you cannot control, you find yourself anchored by promises that reach beyond what eyes can see. This eternal perspective also awakens a new compassion within you. You see others not just as fellow travelers through the ups and downs of life, but as souls with stories just as precious and eternal as your own. Your capacity for empathy grows. You are slower to judge, quicker to forgive, more eager to build bridges rather than walls. The ordinary becomes sacred. Every conversation, every small act of kindness, every moment of laughter or pain carries a significance that echoes far beyond the present. You begin to cultivate gratitude for the very things that once frightened you. The brevity of life, once a source of anxiety, now urges you to cherish each day and to love more freely. The uncertainty of the future, rather than fueling worry, becomes an invitation to trust that all things are working toward a good you may not yet understand. You embrace the truth that while everything earthly is passing, the love and grace that hold you are unchanging, anchoring you in a peace that does not waver when storms come. As you learn to see through the lens of eternity, even your prayers shift. You ask less for comfort and more for wisdom, less for ease and more for courage to live well, to love deeply, to make your days count. There is a serenity in knowing that every trial has purpose. Every joy is a foretaste of something greater, and that your true home is not in any place or possession, but in the enduring embrace of a faithful God. With each step, you become less anxious about what is temporary and more rooted in what is eternal. Life's inevitable changes no longer threaten to uproot you. You move forward with a heart that is both lighter and stronger, prepared to face each new season with calm assurance. And as you walk, you carry with you the gift of perspective, a steady confidence that nothing is wasted, everything belongs, and the peace you have found is not fleeting, but forever. There are times, perhaps after seasons of striving and searching, when you come to know strength in an unexpected form. It does not thunder in with the confidence of old victories, or parade itself with signs of outward success. Instead, it arrives quietly, born in the soil of your own weakness, in the moments when you have nothing left to offer except your honest need. In this tender place, you discover a new depth of relationship, a closeness that grows not from your accomplishments, but from your willingness to be vulnerable, to let yourself be held even as tears still glisten on your cheeks. It is a paradox you could never have scripted, that the very things you once saw as evidence of failure, your weariness, your inability to hold everything together, the tears you could not stop, become the gateway to the most profound experiences of presence and peace. Here, stripped of pretense and striving, you sense the nearness of God in a way you had only read about before. There is no striving left in you, only the simple honesty of a soul that has come to the end of its own strength and found, to its wonder, that this is precisely where love begins to fill the empty spaces. In this gentle embrace, you find that you are not asked to be perfect, not expected to fix every broken piece before drawing near. Instead, you are invited as you are, tired, flawed, hurting, sometimes unsure. The presence that meets you is not stern or disappointed, but gentle, compassionate, attentive to every sigh. In your tears, you discover a joy that runs deeper than surface happiness, a quiet, persistent gladness that is undiminished by pain, because it is rooted not in circumstances, but in the assurance that you are truly known and truly loved. As you live from this new place, you begin to see how much strength there is in admitting your need. Where once you might have hidden your struggles, now you bring them openly, trusting that your weakness is not a barrier but a bridge. Each act of surrender becomes an opportunity for something greater to move through you, a love that is not diminished by your limits, a wisdom that is sharpened in moments of uncertainty, a hope that grows stronger when you let go of the need to appear unbreakable. You notice how your relationships deepen as well. Others are drawn to your honesty, sensing in your openness a permission to let down their own guards. The masks come off, the walls lower, and you share a communion that is raw and real, a celebration of the truth that everyone is in need, and everyone is invited to the feast of grace. Together, you learn to laugh through tears, to find light in the places that once felt only dark, to carry each other when one is too weary to walk alone. What once felt like the end now reveals itself as a beginning. The places of pain become altars of transformation, sanctuaries where new life is born out of old wounds. You discover that strength is not the absence of weakness, but the courage to stand in the light as you are, trusting that you are loved in your imperfection. In your most fragile moments, you sense the gentle, steady presence that has always been there, quietly offering the strength you could not muster on your own. As you embrace this new depth, even sorrow is transformed. Tears, once feared or resisted, become rivers that cleanse and heal, carrying away old burdens and making space for joy. You learn to celebrate not only your victories, but your defeats, for each has brought you closer to the truth of who you are and the one who loves you without condition. The lines between strength and weakness, laughter and weeping become blurred, woven together into a tapestry richer and more beautiful than anything you could have planned. With every step, you move forward no longer afraid of your limitations, but grateful for them. They are the doorway through which grace enters, the invitation to a deeper fellowship than you could have imagined. In the place where you once feared to be seen, you now find yourself most at home, held, strengthened, and filled with a quiet, abiding joy that remains, even when the tears fall. There comes a day, quietly at first, when you realize you have come home, not to a place on any map, but to a deep and peaceful belonging within yourself. What once felt like endless wandering or exile now reveals itself as a purposeful journey, each step infused with meaning you could only glimpse in hindsight. The ache of longing is replaced by a fullness, a joy so real and unexpected that it brings you to tears. This is the festival of return, a celebration not just of reaching a destination, but of discovering the sacredness of the road itself. You look back and see every twist and turn, every detour and delay, not as wasted time, but as essential chapters in the story you were always meant to live. There is gratitude for the struggles that shaped you, for the moments when you nearly gave up but found the strength to press on. Even the seasons of silence and uncertainty now glimmer with significance, as you understand how they deepened your roots and expanded your heart. You thank God for the gifts hidden in disappointment, for the friendships born of sorrow, for the wisdom that could only come through questions and waiting. Joy no longer feels fleeting or fragile, but as a gift received and cherished, a delight that bubbles up from a place deeper than circumstance. You allow yourself to celebrate, to laugh freely, to dance without self-consciousness, to savor the beauty of an ordinary day as if it were the rarest treasure. You see how every smile, every embrace, every shared meal is an expression of divine kindness. Each moment a note in the symphony of grace that has accompanied you all along. With each breath, gratitude grows. You thank God for the nights that taught you to trust, for the dawns that greeted you with gentle hope, for the people who walked beside you, and the solitude that brought clarity. Even your regrets soften into blessings, their sharp edges worn down by forgiveness and understanding. You see how nothing has been wasted, how each victory and defeat, each joy and heartache has found its place in the tapestry of your life. There is freedom here, the kind that comes from letting go of old disappointments and welcoming the newness of each moment. You no longer measure your worth by achievements or compare your journey to others. Instead, you rest in the assurance that you are loved and guided, that every stage of the path has prepared you for this spacious joy. In this acceptance, your gratitude spills over, transforming the way you see yourself, others, and even the world. You are eager to give, to serve, to share from the abundance you have received. You find yourself blessing the road behind you and the road ahead, knowing that both are gifts. The wounds you carry are no longer marks of failure, but signs of endurance and faithfulness. The laughter you share is richer, tinged with the knowledge of sorrow overcome. You savor the simplicity of now, the sunlight on your face, the sound of familiar voices, the quiet presence of peace that fills your days. And so, in this festival of return, you pause to celebrate, not because everything is perfect, but because you have learned that true joy is found in gratitude for the whole story. You honor every chapter, every trial and triumph, every shadow, and every light. Your heart is full, your spirit at rest, and you give thanks for the grace that has led you here again and again into the loving embrace of home. There is a moment in every true journey when you look beyond the present, past the horizon of everything you have known, and realize that your story is far from over. The miles behind you, hard, luminous, filled with questions and gifts, are not a conclusion, but the prologue to something deeper, wider, everlasting. This is where hope takes on its truest form, anchored not in what has already been, but in what is yet to come. The hope that does not die is hope that draws its breath from eternity, carrying within it the courage to dream even after disappointment, to trust that the story is still unfolding with meaning and promise. You begin to sense that everything in this life, both joyful and hard, is a glimpse of something greater, a preparation for a future that extends far beyond the boundaries of time. The longing that remains within you, the desire for lasting peace, for a love that will not end, for a home that will never be lost, is not a flaw, but a signal of your true destiny. You find comfort in the thought that nothing good will be wasted, that every act of kindness, every moment of wonder, every struggle to forgive and begin again is gathered up in a tapestry that stretches toward infinity. This awareness gives you strength to keep hoping, especially when the way forward seems uncertain or the world weighs heavy on your heart. The horizon of eternity reminds you that loss is not the end, that every separation is temporary, and that what matters most cannot be taken away. You learn to see with eyes of faith, glimpsing hints of forever in the simplest things, a sunset that refuses to fade, laughter echoing late into the night, the gentle persistence of love that holds on through every storm. To live with eternity in view is to carry hope as a steady flame, unextinguished by passing trials or shifting seasons. You dream bigger dreams, no longer limited by what is practical or possible, but inspired by the conviction that the best is always yet to come. You invest in others more freely, knowing that every kindness ripples outward into a future you may never see. You build, you serve, you love, trusting that each choice made in faith has echoes that reach beyond the present moment. Even in waiting, you are not diminished. Each unanswered question, each longing unfulfilled, becomes an invitation to trust the promise that the story's best chapters are still being written. The aches that remain are not burdens, but reminders that your heart was made for more than what this world can give. You hold on to hope not as wishful thinking, but as a certainty rooted in the unchanging love that has accompanied you every step of the way. You learn to celebrate beginnings, no matter how small, recognizing in each fresh start the eternal pattern of renewal that undergirds all creation. The future is not a void to be feared, but a vast and luminous horizon calling you forward. You step into it with courage, your heart buoyed by the conviction that no darkness can quench the light you now carry. No loss can erase the hope that has taken root deep within you. As you walk forward, you do so with eyes open to eternity, feet grounded in gratitude, and a spirit alive with anticipation. You give thanks not only for what has been, but for what will be, for the promise that every sorrow will be redeemed, every joy multiplied, and every longing satisfied in ways beyond imagination. This is the hope that does not die, the assurance that what lies ahead is not the end, but the beginning of a story that will never fade, a journey whose best is always yet to come. There comes a time when the searching slows, when all the restless wandering and ceaseless questioning draw to a gentle halt. It is not the ending you once imagined, not a triumphant arrival or a grand display of victory, but a quiet homecoming. You find yourself at the source, where the journey's long arc bends back toward its beginning. And you realize that what you sought in distant places was always meant to be found here, in the depth of your own soul, in the silent embrace of the one who has walked every step beside you. There is no more striving, no more bargaining for peace, only a steady, abiding sense of being held. It feels, in some ways, like returning to the heart of things, to the wellspring that first called you out onto the road. The thirst that once defined your days, sharp, unrelenting, has been met not by answers or achievements, but by the presence that has quietly gathered around your emptiness. There is no fanfare in this meeting, no rush of noise or drama. Instead, a gentle fullness rises within, cool and clear, like living water soaking into dry ground. Each breath comes easier now, unhurried and sure, and you marvel at the ordinary miracle of enough. This is the peace that cannot be shaken by changing circumstances, the quiet joy that persists even as life continues to ebb and flow. You feel it in the way your shoulders drop, the way your mind grows still, the way gratitude wells up without effort. The world is no less complex, but your heart is no longer battered by every shift of the wind. You are at rest, not because you have figured everything out, but because you have learned how to be present to what is, to trust the goodness that holds you even when you cannot see the way forward. There is a lightness here, a new capacity for wonder and delight. Small things become precious. The taste of cool water, the warmth of sun on your face, the sound of laughter echoing through an open window. You are able to let life flow through you without clinging or resisting, meeting each moment as it comes, grateful for both the highs and the lows. The joy you find now is not the fleeting thrill of escape, but the deep satisfaction of belonging, of knowing at last that you are home. You recognize, too, that this peace is not only for yourself. It is the overflow of a well that never runs dry, spilling into your words and actions, touching the lives of those around you. You become a quiet presence in a noisy world, a living reminder that true rest is possible, that fulfillment is not found in the frantic search for more, but in the gentle acceptance of enough. Others are drawn to this calm, and you offer it freely, not as advice or solution, but as a living testimony to the grace that meets every traveler at the end of their journey. As you rest by the waters, you remember the road that brought you here, the deserts and valleys, the storms and the songs. You see how every part of the journey was necessary, how every loss and longing carved space for this fullness, how every question prepared you for the simple answer of presence. There is nothing left to chase, nothing to prove, nothing to fear. You are home, at peace with your story, at peace with the world, at peace with God. And so you linger by the source, unhurried and unafraid, letting the quiet joy seep into every corner of your being. The journey continues, of course, life is always in motion, but the restless longing is gone. In its place is a stillness that runs deep, a confidence that, whatever may come, you will return again and again to this wellspring of grace, to the living water that makes your soul truly alive. If you are ready, I can help continue or expand on any part of this journey, keeping the same seamless flow and tone. Just let me know where you'd like to go next.